Hi, I'm Grant Abbott. I'm the author of The Guru's Guide to Self-Managed Super Funds and also a presenter on I Love SMSF. Now, over the time, I've given presentations to more than 100,000 people on self-managed superannuation funds. And quite often I'll get people coming up and saying, well, why a self-managed superannuation fund? And it's pretty important to understand what a self-managed superannuation fund is. I think we all understand what superannuation is, and really, for most of us, we're giving up 9.5% of our salary each and every quarter to go into a superannuation fund, generally of our employer's choice. Alternatively, we can put money into our own self-managed super fund. But what is a self-managed super fund really? Well, in short, it's a personal superannuation vehicle that you run, you control, and you can have up to 3 other members of your family or your friends inside that self-managed superannuation fund. If it's your family, well, we call it a family self-managed super fund. If it's friends, we call it a friend self-managed super funds. Remember, we can have 4, and then from that, we put all our employer superannuation in there. We get monies from elsewhere. If it's in an industry fund or retail fund, we aggregate it all into that self-managed superannuation fund. If it's family, we can pool our resources. If it's friends, we can pool, or we can actually start to invest ourselves. You see, what I found is the number one reason why people choose a self-managed super fund is they can choose their investments. Now, there's a quid pro quo there. The more that you get engaged and choose your investments inside a self-managed super fund, the more time you put into it, the greater you're going to be rewarded with a golden retirement. If you simply leave your money in an industry or retail fund or a number of funds and leave it to faceless men to invest, then when the market goes down, if it goes down 30 or 40%, you lose 30, 40% of your capital. Whereas if it's your investments, you can choose to get in and out of investments. So what sort of investments can you have? I mean, remember, you're the one who controls it. You can invest in shares, listed, unlisted. You can invest in startups if you want. You can invest in property, residential, vacation, commercial. You can invest in farms. You can invest in bed and breakfast properties. You can even invest offshore. I've seen people with Greek investments, a whole lot. There's been billions of dollars spent in US investments, residential property investments. You can invest in alternatives, gold, silver. Big one at the moment is, can I invest in cryptocurrencies inside my self-managed super fund? Absolutely. You can also invest in cash. You can even lend to your friends if you want. Can't lend to relatives. There are some strict limitations on what you can and cannot do. Generally, you can't deal with a related party. So I can't, for example, go and invest in my brother's company. I can't invest in my own company, but I can invest in someone else's, a friend's company. More importantly, I can't lend to my brother. I can't lend from the super fund to myself, but I can lend to another friend if I want to go and do that. But again, it's got to be commercial market rates of interest. And that's fairly important. We can't then have a residential property likewise inside the fund and then live in it. But I can have a residential property and let my friend live in it if I want. He could have his own fund, have a residential property, and I could live in it if I choose to do so. So there's a whole range of opportunities. Again, the more you get involved, the more strategies, the more your brain starts to pop and starts to think about, well, what could I do? Let me give you a bit of an example, and I call this the SMSF investment game. This is right at the start of the book, and more than happy for you to really start to play that. You can also call it like the Monopoly game. So for example, if I gave you $100,000 to invest, how would you go about investing that? Choose now. What would you invest in? Cryptocurrencies, gold, silver, property? How would you go about investing that money? More importantly, if I gave you 10% of your salary every quarter to invest, how would you invest in that? I mean, every quarter you know that 9.5% is mandated by the government to basically go, at the moment it's probably going into your employer's choice of fund. Imagine if it went into your self-managed super fund, 9.5% of your salary every quarter. What would that amount to? More importantly, what could you invest in? Wouldn't you become engaged? Wouldn't you be excited? Wouldn't you really want to see how your fund's performing? You know, the investments you choose? I mean, some of them would be good, I mean, you're going to have good stock standard like shares and stocks and all that, you know, your basic ones like your banks, but then you might invest in startups. Now, some of the startup investments you have might fall, but it doesn't matter. If you're young, you're going to claw it back, because then there might be the ones that really take off. And I think that's really important. Here's another thing that's you may or may not be aware about, and I've done a video on this, is that also if you've got a good base inside your super fund, and remember this is family, so it's not just your super, have a look around all the accounts of all your family and start to bring them together. Remember, you can only have 4 people in a fund, but once you start to bring it together, it becomes a good pool. Imagine if you had $300,000 in there. If you had $300,000, did you know that banks and credit unions and building societies will lend you around about $400,000 on that? So you have a $300,000 pool, jumps up to $700,000 to go and buy a property. In fact, if I gave you $700,000 to buy a property, where would you invest now? The main thing is, have a look at a self-managed superannuation fund. How much do you need to set one up? Well, it depends. If you've got friends and family and you're over $200,000, you're right on the money there. But the more important thing is to make sure you learn, listen and understand, get more deeply involved, because that super is your money. That's the money that's going to give you a golden retirement. Anyway, it's Grant Abbott. If you'd like to see more of me, go to my YouTube channel, so it's Grant Abbott. More importantly, go to ilovesmsf.com, where there's a whole range of materials, and make sure you register on there so you get my daily strategy, not my daily, my weekly strategy email. It's Grant Abbott, signing off.